If you are measuring intelligence and strength of the networks of the world, the Bitcoin network is some of the smartest people, some of the most powerful people, some people that really understand everything that I just laid out. Why do I know that? Because these are the people that I consume their content and I learned from them. And let me tell you, they are super intelligent. As you're accumulating power and wealth for whatever reason, is it really your power? And I think most people are delusional in the fact that they think they actually have power and they don't. The sad truth is that when you own US dollars, you really own it at the discretion of the people that have power over it. What are you trying to do with this Bitcoin? What are you trying to do with this power? How much time do you want to own? The system is broken. Inflation is robbing your wealth. Banks control your money. But what if there was a way out? Bitcoin isn't just an asset, it's a revolution, a decentralized, unstoppable financial system built for the people, by the people. This is the Daily Bitcoin Podcast, your front row seat to the future of money. No hype, no noise, just real Bitcoin insights from the industry's top voices. Bitcoin isn't the future, it's happening now. And if you're not paying attention, you're already behind. Don't just watch from the sidelines. Be part of the Bitcoin revolution. Subscribe now to the Daily Bitcoin Podcast. All right, we are live. Craig LeBlanc with the Daily Bitcoin Podcast. Sorry, I've been out of pocket these last few days. Just been crazy busy with my other podcast for Parks and Recreation. It's really exploding. And welcome to all the Parks and Rec professionals that are in my other community, to the Bitcoin community. I know that these typically are communities that don't touch very much, but I'm glad that they're here, and I'm glad that we're reaching an audience that typically wouldn't find themselves in Parks and Rec in a Bitcoin community, but yet here we are. So this is Craig LeBlanc, the doorman, with the Daily Bitcoin Podcast, 9 p.m. Eastern. I try to do it Sunday through Thursday, but last week and then Sunday was just slammed. I was traveling a lot. So anyway, here I am. I've got some great topics for you. I'm really going to spend my time answering one question and some follow-on questions that are natural in my mind about that question. So the question is, how much Bitcoin should I own? If you're a Bitcoiner, it's not long before your friends and family kind of get into it. And this question inevitably arises, how much Bitcoin should I own? It's a really tough question to answer because it's you'll see. How much Bitcoin should I own? So people are saying, well, is 1 Bitcoin enough? Is 0.1 Bitcoin enough? I mean, I can say it's almost a mathematical certainty that fiat will forever be going down compared to Bitcoin. So I think Bitcoin goes up forever in a system where debasement is normal and fiat is going to be printed. They have to print more fiat. Absolutely. They will always have to print more fiat. It's a debt-based system, and they need liquidity in the market, and they get it by printing more and more and more. Banks will always use fractional reserve lending. I know a lot of this terminology might not make sense to people that are new to this ecosystem or understanding finances or understanding money. But fractional reserve lending, if you haven't read the book, The Creature from Jekyll Island, it's an oldie but goodie, and it can kind of get you going on what problem Bitcoin solves. And so how much Bitcoin should I own? Well, let me ask you another question to ponder. How much time should you own? How much time do you want? How much time do you want to, 50 years of quality of life? You want 75 years? You want 100 years? If you could purchase more time, would you not? I mean, if it was quality of life, I'm not talking about time being bedridden or something, but if you could live a good quality of life and your intellect was still sharp and strong and you weren't losing intellectual capacity as you got older, imagine that your wealth of knowledge, your intellect would grow with time. You would become increasingly wiser. You would become increasingly more powerful. And And well, in a way, that's what your purchasing power is doing in Bitcoin, is that if you can maintain a quality asset over time, then much like if you could maintain a good quality of life, you would want as much as possible. If you have loved ones around you, if you have a good purpose and mission in life, why would you not want to hang around a little bit longer and continue to build on this passion and purpose that you have in life? Um, and I think with Bitcoin, it really is. There's this guy online. He's called TC. He's on. Shout out to TC if by chance he's listening to this. He does good work. You'll find him often on X Spaces. If you want to know more about Bitcoin, I suggest you go onto X, you go onto the swipe right, I think, and you'll see Spaces. Go onto Spaces and just type in Bitcoin. There's so much good live content. TC is on, he's a regular, especially at night. Um, and so he talks sort of about a time chain, right? Um, Bitcoin and Satoshi has found a way to lock assets in future time. Okay. Think about gold. Is gold locked in time? Gold is locked in the earth, and you have to work to get it out of the earth. I forget how many tons of gold are have to be how much tons of earth have to be mined for every ounce of gold, but you have to work at getting it. It's locked in space. It's locked in the earth's crust. Okay, but when we think about Bitcoin, you cannot mine Bitcoin until it's time for it to be mined. And so, what do I mean by that? So, every 10 minutes, a certain amount of Bitcoin is released. Okay. And I think right now it's 3 point something. I forget. It's after the halving, it was at 6 point something. You can, well, let me just run the math. It started out at 50 every 10 minutes when during the first cycle, the first 4 year cycle. And then it got cut in half to now it's 25 Bitcoin every 10 minutes that the miners mine and the reward they get for mining it. And I know I'm kind of going off a little, but I know I got new Bitcoiners here listening to this content. So I kind of want to explain a little bit about how Bitcoin is born, how a new Bitcoin is created. Um, and so Satoshi in the early days, for the first 4 years, every time a block was solved, which is every 10 minutes on average, the reward for the miners that found that block was 50 Bitcoin. And then in another 10 minutes, another 50 Bitcoin. And so this rewards the people that are doing the hard work of plugging in these computers and providing hash function, providing compute to secure the Bitcoin network. And so shout out to my old school Bitcoiners. I hope I'm doing a good enough job explaining that. But if you really want to dig into it, there are other people that explain that much better than me. So I would suggest you do your own research and find a lot of great content creators that can go deep into that. But just as a simple explanation, so the first 4 years it was 50 per every 10 minutes, and then we had what's called a halving. Okay, so that happens 4 years later, and then now you're only given 25 Bitcoin, but the price of Bitcoin had gone up by then, so it kind of balances out. 50 Bitcoin when it first started, when Bitcoin wasn't worth much, but fast forward 4 years, now a Bitcoin's worth much more. So 25 is worth even more, right? Than the original 50. Fast forward 4 more years, now we're half of 25. It's why they call it a halving, right? And so that's 12.5 is half of 25. What's half of 12.5? 4 years later, we have another halving cycle. And so that's half of 12.5, which is 6.25. And that was our last halving cycle, was where it transitioned from 6.25 to 1.1 something or other, 1.12 something. Okay. So six, and then excuse me, the last halving cycle brought us to, which just recently occurred, I think last April, down to roughly 3 Bitcoin is now the reward for mining a Bitcoin today, real time. And in 4 more years, it gets cut in half again. And so you've got the Bitcoin that was previously mined. There's only 21 million. Most of it has already been mined. There's only like a couple million Bitcoin left. But each 4 years, it gets halved and halved and halved. And I think the last Bitcoin will be mined like 100 plus years from now. And so you cannot mine those future bitcoins until the future. You have to they're created every 10 minutes. There's no way to speed this up. If we quadrupled the amount of miners trying to find it, unlike gold, if you quadrupled the gold mines in the world, you would roughly quadruple the amount of gold that was introduced into the market. Whereas with Bitcoin, if all computers in the world stopped what they were doing and started mining Bitcoin, you'd still get the exact same amount of Bitcoin mined every 10 minutes. And so it is brilliant. This is one of the most brilliant things that Satoshi did is they locked the supply entering the market. Now you can exactly predict how much Bitcoin is coming into the market down to the 10-minute cycle. And you can say, well, this is exactly the amount that comes in. And so as the demand for Bitcoin goes up, there's the same amount of Bitcoin in the market. And if you want more, you're only going to get brand new Bitcoin from the miners every 10 minutes. And right now, they're only getting 3 Bitcoin every 10 minutes. And that's going to be halved again in the next cycle, which is now coming, 3 years, however many months away. And then it's going to be down to like 1.5 Bitcoin. And then, so you can see what this does to a market that demands more of something. There is no more. There's no more Bitcoin. We are all fighting over the whole planet, even the US government, with all of its power, with its reserve currency, can't get any more Bitcoin than is already here. And they can't go mine these future Bitcoin till they are ready to be born, right? And so this is a powerful, powerful function of Bitcoin and how it creates a real stable, measurable environment for us to transact in. Um, so, how much time do you want, right? And maybe this can help you understand how much Bitcoin do you want. Secondly, how much power should you own? Now, this is a different question for anyone, and it depends on who's the owner of the Bitcoin. Well, if you're a nation state trying to protect its wealth, much like how much gold should a nation own, how much gold should a family own, how much gold should you personally own? Well, what are you doing with this? Are you protecting yourself, your family? Are you considering, well, I want to protect my great, 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 great grandchildren? Okay. Well, it depends on how much power, um, like what are you going to use this power for? And remember, Bitcoin, like gold, like money, is power. And what I mean by power is in you can trade your Bitcoin, you can trade your gold, you can trade your wealth uh, for just about anything you need. If you want future homes for your descendants, if you want, um, funds for a rainy day, if you want to start a business. So the person that's trying to start a multi-million dollar business in the future may want to have more capital ready for the day that that business launches. But for the person that's looking to just ride off into the sunset, kind of retire, get on the beach, maybe with his spouse or maybe just by himself. Well, obviously they don't need as much Bitcoin as a nation state. Or and then where do you fall? Are you a nation state trying to protect a nation for hundreds of years? Or are you just someone that's close to retirement and just doesn't want to work forever and doesn't want to be a Walmart greeter in your 70s? Well, that's how you come to that. And with each person has their own needs. Also, are you operating in America, in New York City, where the cost of living is high? Or are you living in the Philippines, which has a much lower cost of living? And so one Bitcoin to an American might not be much, might not be enough. But one Bitcoin to someone, say, in Vietnam, that's a fortune. And right now, that's $80,000. Where is Bitcoin going? Well, it's going up forever, up against fiat. So I've heard many numbers that map out how Bitcoin will be worth a million, 10 million, and it just keeps going per Bitcoin. So you really got to think about, well, what are you going to be doing with this power? What are you going to be doing with this wealth? And that can kind of help you get to that number. If all you're trying to do is secure your retirement and you've already done the math, that with the cost of inflation and with the debasement of my currency, if I can get $1 million of US dollars, then maybe I can live off of that. But I mean, if you had $1 million 20 years ago versus today, think about the cost of housing, the cost of living that has just gone up and up and up. So I think this you kind of have to get to this number yourself, and it's going to be a composite of what are you trying to do with this Bitcoin? What are you trying to do with this power? How much time do you want to own? Okay, so then let's go to the next point. Do you want uncensorable ownership over that power? So, do you want power? Let's say that's $1 million in a US bank can bring you, but there's this corner case that maybe you become an enemy of the state. Maybe you become an enemy of a partner. Maybe you become an enemy of a thief. And so, how secure is that power? Because what if you amass all this gold or dollar or Bitcoin? Let's say you've got 1 million in each. And let's say they're all going to maintain for the next 100 years this $1 million purchasing power. Let's just assume, for the sake of argument, that would you rather $1 million of Bitcoin, $1 million of gold, or $1 million of US dollar, just US dollar, right? Which one is censorable? Which one can be diluted? Um, and so Bitcoin is not going to be diluted. Okay. There's always only going to be 21 million. Whereas dollars, well, I don't know how many dollars are in circulation, but I know this, there's going to be more in the future. And so your $1 million is losing purchasing power. It's losing its ability to purchase things. This is why the cost of eggs go up. This is why the cost of beef goes up. This is why the cost of life goes up. It's because it's typically in a currency that's being diluted. Okay, and so which of the assets do you want? Also, how much dilution do you want? So if you've got like oh, I saw this little video of a kid that was explaining Bitcoin, and he had like a Coca-Cola and in a glass, and is like, do you want people to come pour in a gallon of water in your little glass of Coke? Because that's what's happening to your dollar. So you may think that you're secure, you may think you have enough of a dollar, but then you look into the future and realize, oh my gosh, this $1 million is not going to be able to purchase near what it can purchase today. So now you've got to recalculate, recalibrate everything, versus Bitcoin will only go up in purchasing power as the world gets more and more efficient at bringing goods and services. Because no matter how much power you bring to bear on capturing Bitcoin, there is no more Bitcoin that's going to be introduced into the world above the 21 million. Matter of fact, Bitcoin only becomes more and more rare because people are going to lose Bitcoin constantly. People always lose things, and people are going to lose their seed phrase, and then it's just going to be locked in the system that will never be able to be accessed. So it's Bitcoin is rare. Really, you're buying scarcity. Um, so here's another question. How much permission do you want to seek? So now that let's say you've got your nest egg and you're like, okay, I've got my million, I've hit my mark. Let's say I need $1 million. And I'm just using that number, round numbers, could be 10 million. I don't know what your future is, or what you're trying to do with this, whether you're just trying to protect yourself, your family, a business, a nation state. But do you want an asset that you need permission to deploy? Because US dollars, if I want to send US dollars, and for those of you that haven't been in international trade, I've been in that a little bit. For those of you that know me, I buy stuff from China, and I've been doing this for going to be coming up on a decade. I say that probably I'm coming up on my 8th year. Um, and I have to ask permission. I have to ask permission of the US government. I have to be a citizen in good standings, and maybe good standing is like, don't be a terrorist, right? And my bank accounts were frozen twice because, and when I say frozen, I mean frozen, frozen. And so if you haven't experienced this, it can kind of rattle you a little bit when I'm just clicking along, doing business, buying goods. getting them shipped here, selling them to my clients, and all of a sudden, boom, everything is locked up and frozen. I never realized, and maybe I knew it, but I never experienced it. And a lot of times, what they say is a recession is when your neighbor loses your job, and a depression is when you lose your job. And so, yeah, it's not a big problem till it happens to you. And when it happens to you, you're like, "Oh my gosh, do I really own this asset? Do I really own this $1,000,000?" And the sad truth is that when you own US dollars, you really own it at the discretion of the people that have power over it. And what you'll find out is that in the banking system, you'd have zero of the power. You just hope that the kings don't kick you off their land. And so if you look at your assets as real estate, uh, let's say you own real estate in US dollars, you own actual land like dirt and buildings. If the mayor of that town says, get out of our town, and they have a monopoly on violence through the police force or through the state troopers in a state, then you don't have any of the power. And so all of this power that you thought you had, it's really not yours. And so that has to go into the equation of as you're accumulating power and wealth for whatever reason, um, is it really your power? And I think most people are delusional in the fact that they think they actually have power and they don't. Because if they go against the wrong person or vote for the wrong person or say the wrong thing online, and I think we all experienced this, saw this during this massive censorship that happened during certain elections. We all experienced during COVID. You thought you had the power to just go outside your home. Wrong, you didn't. You had to go on with masks. You had to go on with everything else. You had to play by their rules. If you wanted a job in a certain industry, you had to get the jab. Um, so you find out that you don't have as much power, you don't have as much ownership, and you have to ask a lot of permissions. And so Bitcoin is a permissionless network. Fortunately, unfortunately, I'm not going to take a side on this, but however you look at it, when you press send, so if you haven't sent Bitcoin, it's pretty simple. It's kind of like when you go on Amazon and you see something you like and you press buy, and then somehow in Magic Land, uh, you have funds sitting in some account attached to Amazon, and they send your property, they send your dollars over online, and that vendor gets it, and then they ship you goods and services. And so this system of yours can be shut down at any moment. If Amazon wants to kick you off their network, if the US government wants to drain your bank accounts, then when Amazon goes to pull money out of that bank account, there's none there. It's been frozen. I have had my accounts frozen for on those two occasions where, and I think they just did their due diligence. They called me. I talked to somebody in the government and said, nope, I've been buying this stuff from this same couple of vendors. These are my clients. Here's my stuff. Okay, you're not a terrorist. Boom, everything comes back on. I'm back in business. But it rattled me. And that was one of the things that built my conviction around Bitcoin. Why? Because it's a permissionless network. If I find something online and that person takes Bitcoin and I send it, it sends it. You can go onto uh, like I said, if you've never sent Bitcoin, they basically ask for the wallet address that you would like to send it to, and you press send, and it goes. The network just verifies the funds, it sends it, and now the downside is you can't get it back. Typically, when you send it, it's gone. Um, but it's permissionless. And I think if you want to exist in a free world where we can transact between buyers and sellers, there is no trusted third party. This is the brilliance of Bitcoin. It deletes trust from transaction. We no longer have to trust a third party. And so this deletes what we call a counterparty risk. So what is the counterparty? What is the trusted third party? Let's just list a few third parties that are part of every transaction that you've done in the fiat world. Uh, let's see, Amazon is a trusted third party. Your bank is a trusted third party. And I use this word trusted loosely. This is just terminology. to help you understand it. Do you trust your bank? And I think that banks are somewhat trustworthy. I mean, I have sent every time I swipe my card, I go to Home Depot, I go buy a hamburger. If I've got funds, it works so often that I have learned to just trust its track record. And I'm not saying that they're trustworthy as in they're not going to leak your information or they're not going to cooperate with the government to censor who they want to censor. But I could just kind of trust the record that I have swiped my card tens of thousands of times over my lifetime, and every time it's gone through. So we learn to just kind of trust that the system's going to do what it just did yesterday. If I swipe my card for a burger today, money's in the account. Chances are between Visa, my bank, and the payment system, the payment rails are going to work. Um, but there is a trusted third party, and we really can't do business at all with each other without some sort of third party intermediary that can allow us to do business back and forth. Why? Because I don't own a Visa network. I don't own a bank. And so all I have is some currency that was given to me by a state actor, United States government. And I go on some marketplace, Amazon, and I find some vendor. He's got what I want. And so now I'm trusting that between Amazon and Visa and the banks, I've got three trusted third parties in this transaction. I am, let's say, uh, one party, I'm the buyer, and I've got the vendor, the seller, and who stands between us. Look at all the trusted third parties that stand between us and that can do multiple things. They can add their cut. Amazon doesn't do this for free. They take their cut. The banks do their thing. They take their cut. The US government takes it cut out of my purchasing power. Remember, because every time the bank prints, the US government prints money, they're diluting my purchasing power. This is what third parties do. Parties don't operate for free. Now, Bitcoin, they take their cut. And when I say they, the people that run the miners, the people that run the nodes, but of all the third parties, there's no humans in charge. And I don't need to know the person on the other side. Okay. So this is what's called a permissionless, trustless system. Now, I know a lot of these words, I'm hoping that I'm trying to explain them in as simple terms as possible. Fortunately, I don't know a lot about finances. I don't have a degree in finances. I don't know much about fractional reserve lending and stuff. Of course, I've read the books, but I haven't built Visa. I haven't built an Amazon. I haven't built a bank. So all I can do is say, as a consumer, as a buyer, as a seller, it's really nice to know that I have control over deploying that capital. I have control over sending this power, sending this money to anyone at any time. By the way, it's 24/7. It's never failed. It has been running consistently, solving every block every 10 minutes since 2008. And we've never had a system like this. Now, for me and you in America, it's kind of odd to think that somebody selling hamburgers doesn't have the little card swipey thing or a bank or currency. But in half of the world, 4 billion of the world is not banked, doesn't have currencies, or they can't get a hold of a decent currency like a US dollar. They don't have a banking system. So for this, it is revolutionary. This is something that much of the world has never had, a system that just works, sends power through the internet in the form of Bitcoin that can be traded for goods and services without permission, without being debased, without losing purchasing power. If anything, it's the opposite. Your purchasing power will grow over time because it's a free, permissionless system. Okay, this is what you're going to have to use when calculating how much Bitcoin should I own. You need to be able to predict the future of what your asset is going to look like. So, what does the US dollar look like in the future? What does the Venezuelan currency look like in the future? And and all you can really say is it's uncertain because we don't control that. The consumer that's just transacting, the buyer and the seller do not control these third parties. They participate and they're users of these third parties. Why? Because they have to. If you want to do business, you need to get on some type of payment rails. You need to log on to Amazon. You need to have an account with Amazon. Well, you don't control Amazon. The only control you have is I get to choose what I want to buy and I get to send them money, but I'm on their platform. And if you think you own this platform, just ask a lot of people that had Facebook accounts that were saying stuff they shouldn't have been saying, or I say shouldn't, saying stuff that Facebook didn't like that they were saying, and all of their power that they had and the influence of their community was ripped away from them by they were just deplatformed. And so as you start deciding a power accumulation, Bitcoin accumulation, you should also be aware of do you really own this? Do you really control it? Or do you have to seek others' permission? Do you have to remain in good standing? Do you have to be a citizen of a certain country? Do you have to be of a certain age? Like here in America, if you're under 18, you really can't even have a bank account. It's really your parents' bank accounts. Um, Ask me how I know this. When my accounts got frozen for sending money to China for goods and services, all of my children's accounts got frozen also. Why? Because they were minors, and when I opened them up a bank account, their account was basically my account. Not so with Bitcoin. When you have Bitcoin on your wallet, it does not say, please type in your age, please type in your gender, please type in your race, please type in your political affiliation, please type in your work history and whether you're doing good business, bad business, whatever. Bitcoin doesn't ask all that. Basically, if you got Bitcoin, you can send Bitcoin. If you've got a Bitcoin wallet, you can receive Bitcoin, and you're not asking anyone's permission. All you have to do is download an app, download a wallet, go on exchange, claim Bitcoin. Now you own the Bitcoin. And honestly, I think this is the first thing outside of our own thoughts that we could ever actually say is ours. We've never had as a species the ability to say, I own X. I own the only thing we could own actually is our thoughts. Who else owns your thoughts? They're yours, right? Who else owns your emotions? They're your emotions. Who else owns your depression? It's your depression, right? And so much like those things that we can obviously say, if I'm sad, it's my sadness. If you own Bitcoin in a very similar way, it's your Bitcoin as much as your sadness is your Bitcoin, as much as your excitement is your excitement. We've never had property that could function like this in such a capacity of ownership. And we've certainly never been able to transact in it. And it's certainly never been globally recognized. Yes, sadness is globally recognized as something we can all possess, but you can't buy goods and services with your sadness, right? Even though you can own it, you can own your depression, you can own your feelings, you never could really own US dollars. You never really can even own property. Don't pay your property taxes, and you'll see who truly owns that property. However, Bitcoin, you can, and it's a desirable asset. It's something you have, it's globally recognized. It's desirable. There's hundreds of millions of wallets that are ready to receive and send Bitcoin. And so as you start calculating, answering the original question, how much Bitcoin should I own? These are very important metrics to think about because let's say you have a false premise, which we all do, that our dollars are ours. Okay. But then as we go to transact in them, they're worth less because we stored them 10 years ago. We're trying to spend them 10 years into the future. And we had done our math that, you know what, for me to retire, I need this and I need this much for food and this much for housing. And then as you get older, you go to buy those goods and services only to realize that you have half the money, excuse me, half the purchasing power that you did when you calculated this formula for how much wealth do I need, you were off. Now, was your math off, or did the third parties that are all up in this business do stuff that you could in no way predict? And that's what you cannot do. There is no way to predict how much debasement your currency will face. We don't know if we're going to get somebody, say, like Trump, that's maybe going to not print as much, or maybe we're going to get somebody like Biden that maybe is going to print a little bit more, or anything in between. There's no way to know how much they're going to spend. We don't know if there's going to be massive waste, fraud, and abuse that they're going to dilute our currency to paper over, or if there's going to be responsible. All we have is the history of fiat currency, which typically it accelerates over time. Now, Bitcoin, however, we can perfectly predict how much Bitcoin is in circulation, how much Bitcoin has been mined, how much Bitcoin is coming into existence every 10 minutes, and we can project this out into a distant future that with certainty. Okay, this has to go into the now as we start to calculate, and by the way, if you have not gotten some type of number of what you need to get for you to maintain your life after your earning days are over, everyone has an end to their earning days. When you get so old, and I don't mean just like, old like, I'm kind of 50 and I kind of want to buy. And I know I'm talking about like you're 75, you're 80, and I'm done. I literally, my health is so you're going to be in a position on the back end of your life. Think about what do your last 10 years look like? And if you run out of capital, then you're at the mercy of kids, the state, old folks home, your community to support you the last decade of your life. And unfortunately, if you've never been to an old folks home and see what the elderly endure in other hell, even in here in America, it's kind of sad that when you run out of money, the old folks home can just kick you out, right? And that this is why we have Walmart greeters. This is why we have elderly people that are now exposed and left on the streets. And this is in America. Now imagine the older person that's maybe suffering in India that doesn't have a poor nation, that doesn't have a wealthy family around them or young kids that are willing to support them. And so you should get to that number and do the best you can with certainty to say, this is enough for me to just afford to pay for my funeral. And I'm not depending on my children to pay for my funeral. But what asset is there? What asset is there where you can exactly predict what it's, the rarity that it's going to be? Well, in Bitcoin world, I can say for certain that if I have one Bitcoin, it will always be one of 21 million. Okay. One Bitcoin will always be one of the 21 million. We're not going to wake up 100 years from now and be like, well, my Bitcoin's now one of 210 million. That's not how the system works. It's basically a system with rules, and the rules are only 21 million. This is called fixed supply. Okay. Now, what is fixed supply? If there's only 3 Bugattis made this year, and you give every 20-year-old male on Earth $1 million or $10 million, how many of these 20-year-olds on planet Earth, I've always wanted a Bugatti, but there's only 3. And so now they have to fight over those 3. And it doesn't matter that they're all billionaires. There's only 3. And so it doesn't matter that the United States of America now, with almost nearly infinite money, is coming to buy Bitcoin. They got to get in line with everybody else and fight over the same 21 million Bitcoin. Now, is this important information when you're trying to do the math and run the calculations, create your little spreadsheet? How much money do I need? How much power do I need in the future? How much Bitcoin do I need? Yes, this is extremely valuable information. When you're running a math equation. Now, I'm an engineer by trade, almost engineer. I didn't even graduate. I just kind of used engineering in my background. Why? Because I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. That's what I wanted to do. That's what I've done my whole life. Not a successful entrepreneur. I've had some success, like every entrepreneur. We have our ups and downs. I've had my glory days. I've had my train wrecks. Welcome to entrepreneurship. Everyone's welcome to come do this. But the point is that when you run a math equation, I also was a master electrician by trade. We had to calculate loads Okay. We had to calculate an electrical load. So imagine, I'll give you all a little scenario here. As a young man, I would walk up to a client and they said, "Hey, we need a circuit, an electrical circuit run 200 feet, and it's going to run this motor." And I needed to go do a load calculation. Uh, let's just say this was a three-phase motor. That means it had three hot wires. And let's say this thing drew 200 amps of three phase. Let me use something simple. This is too complex for y'all. Let's just say I've got a kitchen counter and they want to cook a lot of waffles for like a lemonade stand outside. They're gonna sell waffles, and they want to plug in 10 toasters on your kitchen countertop. This is probably much better for the residential minds. Everybody knows what a toaster is. You put your hands over a toaster, it creates heat. Did you know that you can roughly only put one toaster on a regular standard kitchen countertop receptacle? If you plug in two toasters, if you don't believe me, go try it. Go take two toasters, plug it into the same receptacle on your kitchen countertop. You're going to trip that breaker. That 20 amp breaker cannot handle two toasters. Okay. They will trip every time. So you can only put one toaster on 120 amp breaker. If you want 10 toasters, you need roughly 10 circuits. Okay. And trying to run 10 toasters in a kitchen is impossible. There is no kitchen countertop in America that can handle 10 toasters. You're going to have to run extension cords, one to the bathroom, get 20 amps circuit out of the bathroom, maybe one out of the living room, and you're going to have extension cords running to your kitchen countertop. The kitchen will probably handle two toasters because there's usually two circuits on a kitchen countertop. The other 8 are coming from some other part of the house. And so this is called a load calculation. So I would ask my client, let me go look at the nameplate on this motor, and then I would measure the distance run, and I would send appropriate size wiring and amperage to that motor. If I did not measure correctly, or if he gave me the picture of a nameplate that wasn't right, guess what? Plug that motor in. If it's not, if the wires aren't big enough, the breaker's not big enough, it trips the breaker. There's not enough power inside of this wiring system that you just engineered to run the load. So you have to do precise load calculations. And so when I look at that toaster and it says 1500 watts, I know that I need to bring a certain size circuit to it. So how does this relate to how much power, how much load, how much Bitcoin, how much wealth do you need in the future? Well, you need to know first of all that you're measuring sticks, that the information that you're getting is a constant. I know that 15 watts is 15 watts is 15 watts. 15 watts on a kitchen countertop is the same in India, it's the same in Vietnam, it's the same in America, it's the same in New Orleans, Louisiana. 15 watts is 15 watts. It's a constant. And so now on this constant, I can build entire electrical systems because the measuring units are precise. And so one Bitcoin being one Bitcoin, it's necessary to do proper math calculations. In math, constants are necessary. When you build a bridge, you need to know, well, what are we supporting? Are we supporting foot traffic? Are we supporting 6 lanes of interstate? I live right by the Mississippi River Bridge. Those engineers are using very precise engineering formulas. Bitcoin is engineered money. It's cryptography. It is math. Okay. So when we say that 21 million is all the supply there is, you can bet on it. That's all it is. When we say one Bitcoin will always equal one Bitcoin, this is precise math. So when you start to do your load calculations on how much Bitcoin do I need, you can rest assured that your measurements of Bitcoin are always going to be constant. Now, what a Bitcoin will be worth in the future in dollar terms? Who knows? No one knows because that is a function of so many things that cause the money supply to expand and contract. Okay. But if you're running your load calculations on the Bitcoin network, Well, then you can say, at least I know I am buying something that's one of 21 million. It will always be that rare, no more, no less. Well, I guess you could say it'll be more rare in the future due to people losing Bitcoin. But you can see how it's a complicated question to answer, but I would much rather have to figure out how much wealth do I need? How much Bitcoin do I need? Knowing I have constants to work with, not playing this guessing game and then adding 20 or 30% to how many dollars I need into the future, because it's really just a guessing game. Where do you want to live? What's the living expenses? Let's hope that the US dollar remains a global reserve currency, but those are no guarantees. There is no guarantees when you have trusted third parties that aren't calling you as they do what they do. Okay. But with Bitcoiners and the Bitcoin network, we can all say, we've all agreed to this math. It's going to stay that way. And it's not going to change unless 51% of the network decides to change it. And good luck getting everyone to increase the supply of Bitcoin globally. Imagine getting consensus for the entire planet to agree upon an increase in Bitcoin or something. And even if they did, it would equally affect all Bitcoin holders. And that's not the case with fiat. They agree to print more dollars, but you're not the one getting the benefit of that. Typically, it's rules for the and not for me. Whereas in Bitcoin, it's rules for everybody. The same rules apply. Bitcoin it's sent at the same cost. This is another great thing. It's free to send. In other words, there's no increased cost. When I send Bitcoin to China, or if I send it to someone sitting physically right next to me, it's the exact same cost. Whereas if I have gold and I can just hand the coin to the person next to me, or if I say, send this coin to China, oh, well, now who have you involved? And obviously, it's going to be more expensive to send a gold coin on the other side of the planet than it is to send Bitcoin. And it's going to take time. Bitcoin instantly it transacts. Of course, it takes 10 minutes to verify and find the next block. But once you're in that block, it's pretty much the same cost, no matter who or where or when you're sending it to. So these are the things that you have to kind of mull over as you answer that question. How much Bitcoin should I own? I would say this: if you are storing power for the future and you want to depend that that power will be there and will be rare, Bitcoin's the only show in town. There is no other show in town. There is no second best. I love the Michael Saylor quote when they ask him, what's the second best? And he says, there is no second best. And for a lot of Bitcoiners, this has become a funny meme, but it's so true. There is no second best. It's kind of like saying, what's the second best shape of a wheel? I'm like, it's the form factor is a circle. There is no second best. There is just the circle. Anything off the circle is just vastly inferior. And I know that's kind of a very simple way to explain it, but there really is no second best to Bitcoin, because there's either a math formula that's the best math formula, or there's an inferior formula. And all other forms of holding wealth into the future, all other forms of scarcity are in the Bitcoin, are inferior to it. So think about these things when you're answering that question. How much Bitcoin should I own? Also think about, how much time should I own? How much power should I own? Do I want uncensorable ownership over that power? How much dilution do I want? And how much permission do I want to seek? And I think number one is, what you'll find out is, you know what, I think the only thing that I want to own that's safe and secure and that's mathematically engineered and that is a constant, much like I was doing load calculations on electricity, I can say a kilowatt is a kilowatt, that a kilowatt of electricity is a kilowatt of electricity. I don't care who produces that kilowatt. When it comes out of the under of that wire, the toaster does not care. And if you look at a Bitcoin wallet similar to a toaster on an oven, the toaster doesn't care where this kilowatt came from. You plug it in. If it's got a kilowatt of if it's got electricity coming out, it's just going to toast the waffle, right? And in a very similar way, the Bitcoin wallet will just receive it. You can send it. These are constants, and this needs to be now, and this is very new now. Humanity has never had anything even remotely close to what Bitcoin does. We've never had a permissionless network. We've never had a network that doesn't constantly get diluted. We've never been able to transact across space and time at the speed of light. We've never been able to send money and power um, in a permissionless way on the other side of the planet 24/7 for since 2008. This network only becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. And it gets stronger for my next point, and this is my last point. So anyway, that's my rant on that. But my last point is you've got to build the world that you want to live in. The Bitcoin network needs its members, okay? It needs the talent of its members. So if you're a user of Bitcoin, if you're a holder of Bitcoin and you were just sitting on the sidelines doing nothing, shame on you. This is your Bitcoin network. It needs your talent. It needs your voice. It needs you to help with a local Bitcoin meetup. It needs you to run a node. It needs you to maybe run a miners, run a little BitAxe miner on your desk. It needs you to help decentralize and strengthen the network. It needs you to hold. Okay. It needs you to transact. We need to start buying hamburgers and using apps like Fold and all the others. It is only as strong as its people are that use it. And I can tell you, if you are measuring intelligence and strength of the networks of the world, the Bitcoin network is some of the smartest people, some of the most powerful people, some people that really understand everything that I just laid out. Why do I know that? Because these are the people that I consumed their content and I learned from them. And let me tell you, they are super intelligent. They are value producers. And a lot of these people are not in power. And when I say in power, is in they're not in power in the old fiat system. These are not a lot of bankers. These are not a lot of nation states. These are just entrepreneurs, moms and dads, regular workers that have read a lot of the same books back here, whether it's Creature from Jekyll Island or whether it's, here's a classic I always promote, Richest Man in Babylon, one of the best Bitcoin books that doesn't even speak about Bitcoin. This was written so long ago, but it teaches you about money, wealth, wealth generation, wealth preservation. These are the kind of things you're going to have to be familiar with when you're answering this very complicated question. How much Bitcoin should I own? How do you even answer that question to someone who has zero financial education, who doesn't understand the power of a permissionless network, who looks at a permissionless network that's existed in a network that demands permission from so many third parties? They don't understand how to operate outside of that system, and they've never been in a system that doesn't demand permission. So it's hard to explain to a non-Bitcoiner that hasn't done a lot of homework, that gets these terminologies and this understanding of how our current system is broken and how our current system is constantly being debased and diluted. And I want y'all to think about all the permission you have to ask for every single time you swipe a card. Every time you swipe a card, you're asking your bank's permission, you're asking your government's permission, you're asking Visa's permission, you're asking Amazon's permission. Okay. And if any one of those gatekeepers say, people like you can't pass, people like you can't transact, people like you cannot participate in our system, then you're out. And many people have operated on the outside of our banking system here in America for generations. Okay, think of the people that are unbanked in poorer countries. They cannot get the permission that we have. And so we transact and move capital and money freely, and they don't have that freedom until Bitcoin. Bitcoin merely says, you've got a wallet and it's got Bitcoin in it, and you press send, it's going. Okay. This is all stuff that you'll have to dig into. And so all I'm here to do is to kind of maybe plant the seed for some of these questions to be asked and for you to start looking around at the system in the world that you live in. And what you're going to find is, I know this is kind of I'm dating myself, but I think everyone by now has heard of the movie The Matrix. But go watch that movie. You should almost watch it every year, because when you're stuck inside of the Matrix, when you're like Neo inside that little red tank of goop, he thinks that he's living a free life, never realizing he's stuck in this tank of red stuff. And it's hard for his mind. You see how Neo has a hard time wrapping his brain around his whole life was a lie. His whole life was an illusion. And so a lot of the control that you think you have over your property and your wealth is an illusion. And so Bitcoin, for the first time, unplugs you and gives you power over and outside of the normal system. It gives you power to transact, it gives you power to preserve, it gives you power to project into the future. It preserves purchasing power for its stakeholders. And why does it preserve the purchasing power? Because it's scarce, it's cryptographically protected, its scarcity is known and concrete. And here's another, I'll say it's the last one because I can't believe I'm already at 53 minutes on this rant. Um, Bitcoin not only is rare, but it allows us to transact in such a way that without permissions, you can really move through space and time without these same friction. And when I say the word friction, if you're having to pass through, let's say you've got a bag of gold and you've got to pass through these 10 gates. And every time you pass through, the gatekeeper is saying, well, I need a fraction of your gold. If you go through enough gates and on the last gate is your seller, okay, how much gold has been stolen from you by every gatekeeper that you're having to ask permission from? So that's how you need to look at the question of how much Bitcoin should I own? Well, if you're holding fiat, you also need to calculate how many gates am I going to have to walk through that the gatekeepers are going to have a toll, just like a toll bridge. How many toll bridges, how many toll booths are you going to have to go through into the future? And what if the future has many more gatekeepers, whereas Bitcoin has zero gatekeepers? It is literally just you and the buyer, and you're just paying your miners, which are distributed all over the planet, to just do their work for you. They're bringing to bear the computers to basically verify. And so this is a frictionless system. It has the least amount of friction as possible. And there is zero friction for storage. So once you pay your toll to get into the Bitcoin network, which is just a transaction fee, and it's super tiny, you can send like $1 million for just a couple of dollars. But once it gets into that wallet, there's no fees. There's no fees to hold. So you don't, like, let's say you got $1 million worth of Bitcoin in a wallet, it's not being taxed or told a fraction at a time every year that ticks by. No, it just stays pristine and preserved till it's moved. And then you just have to pay the fee to move it. But to hold it, there's no fees. Not so with US dollars, not so with fiat. You can have $1 million in the bank, and even if the bank itself does not charge you any fees, it's being debased. Its purchasing power is being stolen constantly as they print more dollars, and your $1 million becomes a smaller part of an ever expanding supply of money. Let me repeat that. It's a smaller part. Your current dollars are a smaller part of an ever increasing supply. Whereas with Bitcoin, it's a fixed supply. You're going to have to wrap your head around this. It's going to take you some time. It took me 7 years to get here where I'm at, and I'm still learning every day. But that's what you're going to need. Just like when I was an electrician, I had to go seek information. I had to find out the load, what they were going to use it, how often they were going to lose it. Is this was just going to come on once a day, or were they going to turn this machine on and it stay on 24/7? And then once I got this information, I could engineer a system that would work. Okay. So if you're trying to calculate how much Bitcoin you're going to need based off of what are you going to do with this Bitcoin? Is it just supporting you? Is it supporting you and the spouse? Is it supporting multi-generational kids that come after you? You got to have some constants. Otherwise, it's at best, it's just a guess. Whereas with Bitcoin, you can know for certain that if I attain one Bitcoin, it will always be one of 21 million. But if I go attain $1 million, it will always be one of an ever increasing supply. Okay. So I think I've said enough. Lastly, I encourage everyone to attend a Bitcoin meetup. If you want to come meet me, I will be in Baton Rouge every first Tuesday running this podcast from the Bulldog. I will also be every Thursday in New Orleans, every first Thursday of the month in New Orleans. But just go on meetup.com. If you haven't heard of the great app called Orange Pill, it is a Bitcoin only. You pay like $100 lifetime membership, and it's nothing but Bitcoiners. And there's a lot of great stuff going on in there. They'll show you the vendors around there. You could talk to other Bitcoiners. You can also find Bitcoin meetups there, or you can go to meetup.com, put in Bitcoin, and there are hundreds of Bitcoin meetups nationwide that meet weekly and monthly. Go attend one of those. And then, as I said before, contribute to the network. Add more than just your capital. Add your mind, add your labor. Let's strengthen the network. Let's run a node. Let's get into Bitcoin mining. Let's get into education. Please start a podcast. And by the way, if you want to start a Bitcoin podcast, hit me up on LinkedIn, hit me up on X. I will help you. When I say help you, you're going to have to do the work, but I will show you the ropes and I'll show you what I use, whether it's sound equipment, whether it's softwares like StreamYard does really well. We need more Bitcoin voices out there, and you don't have to be the end all be all know all when it comes. Just start just start. The best entrepreneurial advice I've ever gotten in my life was start. And once you get 50 episodes under your belt, you're going to be shocked at how much you've improved every single episode. So just start your Bitcoin meetup, start your Bitcoin podcast, go start by just get off zero. Shout out to Lynn Alden. I think she had a great quote that she said, I don't know how Bitcoin. I don't know how much Bitcoin you should have, but I don't think zero is the answer. So get off zero first. Go buy $100 worth of Bitcoin. Embedded in that $100 purchase are going to be all the lessons that it would take to buy $1 million worth of Bitcoin. You're going to have to set up a wallet. You're going to have to get an exchange. You're going to have to connect a bank. You're going to have to trade fiat on exchange for Bitcoin. You have to take custody of your Bitcoin. All that needs to happen, whether you're buying $10 worth of Bitcoin or whether you're buying $1 million worth of Bitcoin. So what you need is those lessons. Step one is you need the lessons. All right. And that can be done for a $100 purchase of Bitcoin. You don't have to buy a whole Bitcoin or anything like that. Just get off zero, get a wallet, start your operational security. And as your knowledge grows, because you've experienced buying Bitcoin, so will your conviction grow as you compare it to all the other things that you own and transact in. It's like anything else. Experience is what you need. And what you need is experience outside the matrix, outside the Bitcoin network. And you can get that for as cheap as, $10, $20, $100. Go get those lessons. You'll need them. All right. So I'm Craig LeBlanc with the Daily Bitcoin Podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Thanks to all my Parks and Rec people that are coming from my much larger podcast. I appreciate y'all. I really do. And thank y'all so much for keeping our parks beautiful. I'm so glad y'all can come over to the Bitcoin community and hear me and other Bitcoiners rant. I am by no means the best or smartest Bitcoiner. If anything, I'm just one of the newbies coming in. I might have been in it for a while, but there are much more brilliant people making great content. If you haven't discovered, let me give you a few to go follow. Anything by Jeff Booth. I absolutely love it. If you haven't read Saifedeem's book, The Bitcoin Standard, another great one. Broken Money is another awesome one by Lynn Alden. Those are just a few. If you want to learn how to do some of the hardware stuff, what do I do? What are my first steps? How do I get a wallet? Which ones do I get? Look up a guy named BTC Sessions, one of our great Canadians that's contributing to this network by doing a bunch of how-to explainers. He's got a great YouTube channel. Pretty much everything he puts out is so solid. So shout out to Ben. I need to get him as a guest on the show. He used to be regular on my other Bitcoin show, but those are the guys that really can help you. Maybe, and this is why I have the title, The Doorman, is because most of the time I just get people in the door. But the true geniuses are behind me in the Bitcoin community that are making YouTube channels, that are making that are writing great books, and that can explain everything at a much deeper and higher level. So if I got you in here, if you're in Parks and Rec, don't stay here with me. Go meet the rest of the Bitcoin community to help deepen your wisdom and increase your operational security. All the above. You've got quite an educational journey ahead of you. Best thing you can do is just go get that knowledge, go get that wisdom. So glad that y'all could join me today. I will be here again tomorrow, 9 p.m. I'm going to try to do this 4 or 5 days a week. because it's a passion project of mine, and I want to contribute to the network that I believe in, and I really believe it contributes to the overall hope and prosperity of humankind, of humanity, and so I think we should all do our part. Hopefully, you can come by one day and say hello to me in New Orleans or Baton Rouge on first Tuesdays in Baton Rouge, on first Thursdays in New Orleans. I'd love to meet y'all, and I will see y'all here tomorrow. Signing off, this is Craig LeBlanc, the Doorman, with the Daily Bitcoin Podcast. Love you guys. Bye.
Welcome to the Daily Bitcoin Podcast, where knowledge meets financial freedom. We're here to break down the world of Bitcoin. No fluff, no hype, just real talk about how this digital asset is reshaping the future of money. Inflation is stealing your purchasing power, but what if there was a way to fight back? Enter Bitcoin, the digital currency that empowers you to take control of your wealth. Ever wondered why your money doesn't stretch as far as it used to? At the Daily Bitcoin Podcast, we educate, inform, and inspire. From expert interviews to breaking news, we bring you everything you need to stay ahead in the Bitcoin community. Market updates, expert insights, real-world use cases, and practical tips to navigate the Bitcoin economy. So whether you're a seasoned Bitcoin investor or just getting started, this is your daily dose of Bitcoin wisdom. Don't miss out. Subscribe now, hit that bell icon, and let's break free from the chains of inflation, one Bitcoin at a time. The Daily Bitcoin Podcast, your gateway to financial freedom.